the DNC wrapped and we're now in this like post-DNC world? Have we been changed? Has it washed over us? Is nothing different? We'll look at some polls in a bit, but I just want to speak to like how I think all over the place the DNC was thematically. Like personally, like and I know, Alex, you've written a couple pieces about this, but for me, I was like, it was very like there was a sense of justice. The Central Park Five spoke, wrongly imprisoned, not by Donald Trump, but Donald Trump was like, there should be the death penalty for these 5 teens. That was amazing. But then like a sheriff spoke, and a sheriff was like, we knelt with the BLM demonstrators, pat on back. And meanwhile, there was like no one representing like the Black Lives Matter movement. And then a surprise guest that Karinda and I were probably sad to learn was not Beyonce or anyone really. There was no guest. And so it was just a really interesting, like, it was a very like, to for lack of a better term, it felt like a very law and order DNC in maybe the best way possible, even though I disagree with like the law and order framing, but Kamala being a prosecutor, and telling the story of how she became a prosecutor because a friend in school was being abused by a family member. She was like, people like that should be locked up, And so there was that, but I don't know. What did you guys, Karinda, what did you make of it? How much did you watch? What did you think?
I was in and out of it. I thought that, like you said, it was kind of all over the place. I mean, I like the fact that, the Democrats have these sort of, I don't know if you want to call it warring factions or sort of, the progressive against the billionaires, against the, whatever. I mean, they had some Republicans there who were endorsing Kamala, but they wouldn't let Palestinians speak. I mean, it was just a lot of things going on. And
right.
I mean, overall, I think it was much better than the RNC, but I don't know how high a bar that is. I mean, Michelle's speech was. I mean, it was good. It was a chef's kiss. It was like she woke up and said, this, when they go low, we go high. We're not doing that anymore. And I was here for it.
I really appreciated Michelle's speech. I think to me, what I noticed about Michelle Obama was actually how not of a politician she sounded. Like she didn't go over there and like take her time to say this thing. She talked like someone, she was talking to you. And like, you never see that. Even AOC on the stage, who I think is very interpersonal, was doing a political thing. And Michelle Obama was just like, look, we also can't get too cocky. We got to work hard. Everyone's got to work hard. It was just it was good. But Alex, you had some really interesting observations about, basically what this new candidate has meant for the entire DNC. So many people wouldn't even shown up had it been Joe Biden. So what were like your takeaways on how the tone has changed?
Yeah, I mean, there sort of was a surprise guest at the DNC, and it was Kamala Harris, right? Like, that was the overall theme. I was disappointed by the lack of Beyonce. My girlfriend was very disappointed by the lack of Beyonce. But I think the overall mood at the DNC was like, this is our surprise nominee, and it's so much better right now. But, with that came this idea that, like, she was bringing the party, right? That Harris represents the joy of being unburdened by the anxiety of having, an 82-year-old who can't speak coherently as the nominee. And everyone, I think, did genuinely feel great about that. But the flip side of that was also, in talking to delegates, there was like a real grinding anxiety that it could stop at any moment. So it did feel like being at a party that's kind of gone on a little too long, where at every point, everyone's like, we got to keep this going. Like, we got to keep it going. Right. And, that's when the drugs come out. But that's when people make bad decisions sometimes. I don't think that that's fully what the DNC was, but I think what you saw was this idea that they're presenting themselves as like a common sense alternative to Trump. And that's where the weird attacks come from. I think it's a really salient way to attack Trump. It's way smarter than what Clinton did in 2016, like this idea that he's this kind of authoritarian aberration. Instead, they're just like, oh, you know, we're just normal people and we care about you as normal people. And he's this rich guy and all of his friends are demented rich freaks or ethno-nationalists or Christian fundamentalists. And like, we just want to make sure that, you know, you can take your kid to soccer practice and not be too worried about anything. That's a perfectly reasonable campaign message. The problem is that like, can you live on that alone? Maybe in a 75-day campaign, but as you were saying, the rest of it is where things got into a gray area. I thought that the immigration messaging in particular in this convention was alarming. It was at times like almost proto-fascist. It was extremely kind of, it was much further to the right than at any point. If you look back at 2020 or even 2022, certainly 2018, when Democrats won on liberal immigration messaging, the party has taken a really hard right turn there. That's really concerning to me. And again, like the rest of it was, I think this anxiety, you know, in 2019, when Harris ran for president, her record as a prosecutor was really a sort of albatross around her neck. And I think they were very careful to try to position it as a good thing here. They're using it as this like, you know, prosecutor versus the felon framing.
Yeah.
But they're also scared of what the implications of that are too. So in general, what you saw was them kind of tiptoeing into a bunch of policy areas with the exception of immigration, but not trying to say too much like they're liberal, but like, do we know how liberal? I don't think we do.
Yeah, it wasn't, there was not a lot of specifics. I mean, she's been more specific in some of her campaigns. There's just a week before talking about actually going after, you know, price gougers and, you know, which I think is a really salient thing to campaign on. I think we're all thinking about like, fuck, I can't literally do anything. Everything is so expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, wasn't there someone from Border Patrol who spoke at the DNC? Like, and she sort of touted that she will pass this terrible bipartisan border bill if elected president that Donald Trump would love, that Trump supporters love. But I also think that you mentioned in one of your pieces about how there's not as much of a focus on like, oh, we're scared about the end of democracy. We're scared about the end of democracy. And there is more of a focus on, okay, the vision we're presenting, although a little too rightward shifting in certain areas, a little cloudy in others, it's at least one that's like hopeful. Like there's a little bit, as Michelle Obama said, you feel the hope coming back in. It doesn't all have to be, this is just like a vote to save our lives.
Yeah, I think that the thing about the Biden campaign, I think that it was deeply felt. I think Joe Biden genuinely saw himself as like carrying the torch of democracy and that this was his mission and that's why he was elected. But the thing to also note about the people that were running that campaign is that they were dumb, right? Like they were looking at polling that said that 2/3 of Americans care about democracy. Well, that is one of their most important issues. But some of those people are January 6ers, right? Too. Like this is not a salient message. Like what people care about and what people are going to vote over is that, you know, who's going to be best for fixing inflation, right? The democracy question, though, I think, you know, it is very important. It's not necessarily a salient poll issue. And again, if you think about how it actually matters, like it's much more important to do something like Supreme Court reform there, which Biden and Harris have been, I think, a little wishy-washy about. There's been some movement there over the last 2 months, but that I think was like the most important. I think it's been done basically without anyone noticing it. But the central focus of Biden's reelection campaign was vote for me because if you don't, this might be the last time that you vote. That came up in the DNC some, but for the most part, they were just saying, look, you know, vote for us because Kamala and Tim Walz, they're middle-class people. You know, they have families that are normal. They can relate to you as normal human beings. They care about the things that you care about. And these other people are talking about all kinds of crazy nonsense. Yeah.
Basket of deplorables being workshopped into weird, I think was a good move.
Yeah.
And a little bit like, you know, I mean, Karinda, like I felt like, you know, just kind of taking the bite out of Trump, like kind of, I like the line, I said this on Friday, I like the line that Kamala gave, which was basically like, Trump's like an unserious man, but re-electing him is incredibly serious. Like that would mean serious things for the line. That was so perfect.
I think the Democrats in general, and I read Alex's a couple of his pieces. It's like I think the Democrats have finally said, you know, enough is enough. Like we're not going to be like this. Trump has said all kinds of name calling. I mean, like a middle schooler. I mean, he's calling Kamala a comrade. And then he's calling
Kamala.
calling Tampon Tim and Sleepy Joe. I mean, and the Democrats have finally said, okay, if that's what you want to do, like we can go there too, and we can be more fighting in our criticism of you and of Republicans. And Trump was very, very hurt by it. Did you see his speech? Like after he was like, they were talking about me. I was like, you've been dragging them for the last 4 years. And he was like, oh my God, they said very nasty things about me.
Oh boy.
It's almost like he doesn't even know that he's saying nasty things. I was like, that in of itself is problematic. Like you don't know that
it's okay when they do it though. Well, this is the Sarah Huckabee Sanders being made fun of at the a White House press correspondence dinner. Just like you cannot take it, but you dish it out constantly.
Oh, he was so hurt, which I was a little giddy about actually.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.